beti egunero Goldera berdina egiten dauzo Feliz amaitxie egie gero Zenbak izonek azengo zulo
This song is in the very unique Basque language. It's unlike any other spoken language on earth. It's indigenous to this northern part of Spain. We're on a hilltop overlooking the magnificent Basque city of Bilbao. Below us is the city's jewel, its Guggenheim Museum, inaugurated in 1997. The museum sits alongside the Nervion River. Our view was spectacular on this Thursday morning in June, 20-odd years since this museum transformed Bilbao into a thriving tourist destination. We were driven down from the hilltop in our bus. We were a tour group of 10 with our guide, and we're going to get up close to this magnificent structure. Even on this slightly overcast morning, the distinctive titanium curves and soaring glass atriums gleamed as we passed close by the areas that contain the museum's art collection. Further on, we passed more traditional-shaped sections. They contain the administrative areas of the Guggenheim Bilbao. Then we came to the flower-encrusted giant sculpture called Puppy by American artist Jeff Koons. It was clear that unique was a word we would use to describe this place. Our tour bus pulled up just 1 block from the museum. Our accommodations were at the small boutique Miro Hotel. Inside the Miro was a reception desk and a tiny modern-style bar lounge. We went to our room that was down a hall with the room numbers lighted on the floor. We were in room 61. We opened it to reveal a small contemporary space designed with right-angle appointments. A quick look at the marble bathroom and then the window, just a light box that didn't open. No time to linger. We were off to meet our local guide, Sergio.
To show you the most beautiful city of the world, which is Bilbao, and the Guggenheim Museum. All right? So let's enter. Let's go.
Let's go.
This time on foot, we returned to get a better look at the 43-foot-high West Highland Terrier. Koons combined a seasonal flower garden with a puppy, 2 comforting symbols to greet us. The sunshine now cooperated as we approached the museum that was created with cutting-edge, computer-aided design technology. As we left street level, we gazed up at the shining, undulating surfaces. While our tickets were being purchased, we went to a model of the museum that's displayed in the lobby. This amazing design was created by Canadian-born American architect Frank Gehry. He won a 1991 competition with its spaces unlike any other for the presentation of art. No photos are allowed inside the galleries, so we'll just begin our tour under a textile sculpture where the architecture here is the true star anyway.
That is an American artist. Her name is Jenny Hauser from New York. And Jenny Hauser became very popular in New York displaying information panels. And she said, well, art is now developing and we can use different materials to make art.
We walked through Jenny Holzer's words that were in English on one side and in Basque on the other. Then we looked beyond into the interior of this fabulous museum. Sergio led us outside to the river's edge, where we were greeted with tall trees and the eye by Indian-born British sculptor Anish Kapoor. Further on rises the red arch of French artist Daniel Buren. It straddles the roadway beyond. Jeff Koon's sculpture Tulips, a bouquet of multicolored balloon flowers in gargantuan proportions, rests near a pond where a fog sculpture is pumped into the air. This installation is by Japanese artist Fujiko Kayaya, and its cloud adds atmosphere to this completely fascinating museum. This is truly a unique place for both architecture and art.
It's just a decoration of the museum.
The time was approaching for our dinner, so we went back to our bus.
We are going now to continue exploring the city. We hope you enjoy the Guggenheim.
Driving again past the museum in the spectacular area of Bilbao, dramatically transformed. Before its redevelopment, this curve in the river was a derelict shipping and factory district.
The thermometer read 25 or 77 degrees Fahrenheit as we stepped off the bus in downtown Bilbao. We walked through the pedestrianized district to the Plaza Nueva. Folks were out enjoying the evening as we went into a place famous for its pintos, the Basque country's version of tapas. Sergio pointed out some of the most popular varieties. Pintos are distinguished by a stick that's used as a handle. Pintos means spike in Basque. A large variety is presented, sometimes on the menu board, but often just displayed for the eater's selection. Usually of locally sourced ingredients, like these olives, you might find long bites like this shrimp and chicken with sauce. Of course, not all items are on spikes. This is langoustines wrapped in puff pastry. We looked at the yummy variety and then walked back to the table that had been reserved for our group. After eating, we departed the back room, walking again through the bar area, now completely jammed with diners. Then we followed a waiter as he carried an order out to the Plaza Nueva. It was a perfect evening for al fresco dining. Folks could watch kids at play in the plaza while enjoying wine and pintos with friends and family. A safe environment to relax. We'd had a full day after our morning flight from Madrid. The long day's sunshine made us want to linger, but we walked back to the commercial area of Bilbao that contained an old church and a statue of a man in a beret, a formerly typical hat worn by Basque men in the past. Then we came to the 19th century train station, a transportation hub in Bilbao. As we got closer, we realized that out front was a display of the solar system made from large inflatable balls. Local women were out walking their dogs as music blared from loudspeakers near the display. We enjoyed people watching and seeing this installation of art in the downtown area. Our group waited for the goal of experiencing taking public transportation back to our hotel.
Yes. This is for tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be sunny at 8 o'clock.
Oh, so wonderful.
Let's go inside. Press the button. Okay. Let's go inside. Doesn't matter. You can pull out the chair.
Through the textured windows, the solar system drifted by as we left the older part of Bilbao. Soon we returned to the redeveloped area on this modern rail system. After arriving at our train platform, we made a quick stop at our hotel and immediately left to get pictures of the museum from across the Nervion River. We came to the titanium, marble, and glass building sitting near the roadway. We could almost reach out and touch the shimmering building as we walked past. Next to the river, we could see this massive 30-foot-high metal sculpture below. It's a spider called Mama. It's a creation of French-born American artist Louise Bourgeois, whose actual mother was in the weaving business. Women on paddleboards were out enjoying themselves on the river. We watched their progress as we continued crossing. There's an elevator in the middle to take pedestrians down to the waterside. There it was, the location for the first photo we ever saw of this museum. Sitting across from us was the daring and magnificent museum that changed this area of Bilbao from a crumbling and polluted industrialized eyesore, radically altering the way both locals and visitors see and experience Bilbao.
Breakfast in the Miro Hotel was in an intimate dining room that overlooked the street. Quiet on this morning. After eating, we were once again off on tour.
Okay, I'm Neolithic. I'm from Guernica. It's a village called 30 kilometers from here. So on the way to San Sebastian to Donosti, we've got an hour and 50 minutes. So we will talk about the Basque country, the visit around here. Any question you've got, I'm pleased to answer and enjoy the trip.
It was once again overcast as we drove along the very modern and well-maintained Spanish autovia. We were going to the Bay of Biscay, to the resort city of San Sebastian, only 12 miles from the French border. In 1808, the island in the middle of this inlet was the site of a Napoleonic battle with the British Royal Navy. San Sebastian was subsequently destroyed. Later, the city was rebuilt in opulent neoclassical style. As a result, it became a famous Belle Epoque destination for the royal, rich, and famous.
Main park at the top of Igueldo, at the top of this little hill, it's 400 meters high. At the top of this, there is an amusement park which has been built up when the monarchy and all these high-class people started to come here.
At the top of Mount Igueldo, with its distinctive tower, sits an amusement park begun in 1912. An old-style kiddie train and some 1950s bumper cars share the space with a traditional house of terror and other challenges to stamina and strength. We hadn't come for the park, but for the panoramic view. Our group posed on the overlook with the beautiful backdrop of San Sebastian and magnificent Concha Bay.
So when they started planning the city, they took Biarritz as a example. I would say Biarritz is another glamorous city on the other side of the Pyrenees, the French one. Biarritz and Paris. And when you walk through Donosti, you will see the bridges, the buildings. They've got a big influence from there. When you were walking in Bilbao, the influence was British, and many people was even speaking in English. In here, you will have a lot of people talking in French because it's connected. Always has been connected with France.
After one last look at the old tower from 1748, we returned to our bus to begin further exploration of San Sebastian. Tamarisk trees and other exotic species dot the waterfront park that hugs the promenade next to the beach. We were dropped off to gaze down onto the expansive sand. A man was bathing below us in a public shower. We could see the tower near the amusement park across the inlet. People were out enjoying the cool morning on the spacious, shallow beach. And Aritz told us the man drawing in the sand was writing Basque separatist sentiments. The movement advocates for political unification and separation of all Basque-speaking provinces in both Spain and France. The morning stroll was well underway as we came to the end of the promenade. Dog walkers mingled with phone walkers as we came to a colorful carousel. Leaving the man making giant bubbles, we came to the City Hall. A former casino built in 1887, it was repurposed after a 1924 ban on gambling. A man in the typical Basque beret passed by. Disappearing now, most men have eliminated berets from their wardrobes. An exception is the military uniform. Along a beautiful boulevard, we turned away from the beach and headed into the city. We were aiming for the market area to check out the way locals shop for groceries. We'd walked into the downtown shopping district where we checked out the beautiful Spanish fashions. We were headed for San Sebastian's large Plaza of the Constitution. We were now deep in the heart of the old town, in the main square of the city. It was once a bull arena. Numbers above each window marked bullring boxes formerly used to watch the bullfight. This main square is also the site of many demonstrations for Basque separation from Spanish control. We left the square where Enneret showed us some separatist graffiti written in Basque. Street signs are cleverly designed to help find the way through this old part of town. We passed by shops and an old Catholic church. The power of Roman Catholics in Spain is gradually eroding. Statistics show increased secularization of the population. Laws have been passed allowing divorce, abortion, same-sex marriage, and the elimination of public funding of many church activities. A plaque designating an old guild location reflects the maritime history of this city. Some old buildings had survived and lend their architectural texture to the mostly Belle Epoque style town. Street art often pops up, like this fishing couple over an outdoor cafe. Eating street side is a favorite pastime here. The variety of diversions is abundant, like this shop selling espadrilles, those canvas and rope shoes that originated as footwear for Spanish peasants. We'd walked through the old town, and now we're going to find a restaurant. It's a place famous with local gourmets.
The Rioja area. So we are going to see another part of the Basque country. We are going to cross also some mountains. There's like a nature park around there, and the mountains are very, very important for the wine production, because it is due to those mountains that kind of influence the climate over there, that allow Rioja to be one of the most famous wine production areas in Spain. Even in the States, if you go to a wine shop and you are looking for Spanish wines, you are probably going to find two regions that are represented there. One of them is the Rioja, for sure, and the other one is probably Rueda.
We had passed through the coastal area and were now in the famous Rioja grape-growing region of the Basque Country. Our outing today began with the world-famous Marquesa de Riscal Hotel and Winery. Yes, that's another Frank Gehry confection. Our autovia took us past the undulating hotel rooftop in the distance, shining with the various colors of wine and the blue sky. From the parking lot, we walked through a garden and came to buildings in a traditional design with the abstract hotel rising beyond. The contrast of the deconstructed titanium above the rectangular stone buildings was fascinating. Down a long road, we came from the newest to the oldest building, dating from 1856. We went over to the doorway of the stone bodega, where we met our winery guide for this morning, Serena, a local native. She took us into the musty building with its notes of grapes and dampness. The old cellars were filled with numerous oak casks holding the liquid stock of this bodega. While wandering the place, Serena explained the philosophy of the oenologist here. Long caves of barrels gave way to long caves of bottles as we entered the bottling plant. Just next to this room with its modern equipment was a small theater, where we then went to watch a video about the winery.
Of course, the art of winemaking, as Don Guillermo was quick to realize, must combine respect and tradition with a large dose of experimentation. The current challenge facing Marqués de Riscal is that of modernity. The aptly named City of Wine bears the signature of the renowned architect Frank Gehry, a symbol of modernity.
It had to be something that felt comfortable with the terrain, and it had to be festive. It had to be something exciting. It had to be, because after all, wine is about joy and pleasure, and so this building had to be evocative of those kind of things.
the valley with some wineries. There's another winery that we see in front in the valley. We're not going in that one, but it's an interesting building. There's actually another building from Calatrava, Santiago de Calatrava, the famous architect that built many buildings that we have seen so far, and very controversial. He built the pedestrian bridge, the Subisuri Bridge in Bilbao. He built in Oviedo the Congress Center, we are going to see there. He built a railway station in Lisbon. He built part of the Memorial 9/11 in New York. And he built here the Bodega de Isius.
We had watched a bridal couple have their formal photos taken in front of this rippling bodega designed by Spaniard Santiago Calatrava, another superstar architect. He took inspiration from the undulating Cantabrian mountains in this spectacular setting. Then we went to the nearby hilltop town of Laguardia.
After lunch we are going to have a walk in the town to discover the narrow streets of the old town, very well preserved, Laguardia. And the city is totally surrounded by walls.
Up the hill we went and passed by the city wall that has now been pierced to allow access in several places. We left our bus and walked over to one doorway that held our restaurant. Inside, we found our hostess and then walked upstairs to an intimate, private dining room. Several kinds of local wine were delivered and opened at our table, along with a handwritten menu describing the selections for our beautifully prepared meal. Departing, we realized this charming place was empty, probably as Spanish mealtimes are later than our usual times. We went past a bakery fragrant with freshly baked loaves on display and under newly washed laundry. Some cafes were beginning to fill with lively parties as we wandered further into LaGuardia. It's documented that this hilltop has been occupied since the Bronze Age. These buildings are mostly medieval, and that gives that old world charm that we have come to take pleasure in. LaGuardia has a small garden next to its church. There we rested briefly. It contains bronze tabletop sculptures by the Spanish artist Coco Rico. The objects are satchels, shoes, and for some reason were really fascinating. We then wandered past arcaded galleries that allow walking in the shade away from the Spanish sunshine or rain, and past wonderful eateries. Men in black uniforms waited tables, some laden with giant mushrooms. We had seen these on offer in the San Sebastian market. Evidently, it's a regional specialty. Then we went back to the bus.
Another discovery for you. There is a dolmen. It was a place where they would bury their dead. So it's like a burial site, and they have like a chamber, and it's still pretty much in a good shape, and that is going to be our last stop.
Buried in this giant vineyard, uncovered in 1936, sits a Neolithic stone dolmen, 5,000 years old.
This was a burial chamber. And this, you can still see very well the rock formation that makes like a corridor. They would have like a corridor, and then you get into a larger chamber in the middle that is composed by 3 or 4 standing stones that has a stone covering on top.
and this would be covered with dirt. So it would be hidden from the view.
This ancient dolmen held the remains of 39 people, along with flint arrowheads, necklaces, a bone spatula, and ceramic vessels, now residing in a local museum. We drove away, passing a poppy-strewn field, Laguardia disappearing in the distance. Continued past bush vineyards so common in Spain. It seemed that very quickly we were back in Bilbao and returning to our Miro Hotel, named for the Spanish artist.
Bilbao was jumping with people when we returned. It was Saturday evening. It was the annual White Night Festival. On June 15, 1300, the city of Bilbao's founding charter was signed. That event is celebrated with a night of remembrance. It features sound and light shows that invite you to see Bilbao in a new light. We decided to walk along the riverfront to a footbridge called Zubizuri, Basque for White Bridge. Seemed fitting. It was designed by Santiago Calatrava. Yes, he gets many commissions. After watching revelers pass under the bridge, we returned back along the sinuous white span. Modern buildings rose up, providing a spectacular skyline. This time it was kayakers we saw as we approached the giant Mama. She once again rose above us. Isn't that guy making giant bubbles the same man we'd seen in San Sebastian? He'd no doubt come to be part of the celebration. We were on our own this evening for dinner, so we chose a seafood restaurant right down from the Miro Hotel. Embroidered napkins predicted a splendid meal. Not only was it festival night, but Spain was playing football against Portugal. Spain was ahead by 1. We could see the TV above as we shared our seafood extravaganza. Back at the hotel, we met up with our group. Anna showed us the various venues scheduled for sound and light shows. Now dark, we went out to experience the White Night celebration.
We checked out the Miro Hotel and departed Bilbao. The streets were quieter now on this Sunday morning as we were driven one final time through this marvelous city and this unforgettable museum with its convention-shattering fluid design next to the river. We came next to the mouth of the Nervion River just before it empties into the Bay of Biscay. We were going to cross back over the river via the amazing UNESCO World Heritage Site, Vizcaya Bridge. It's the world's oldest transporter bridge, built in 1893, the first of its kind. Arriving at the staging platform, we looked at some of the information displays there. Who knew there were so many transporter bridges all over the world? We had arrived on the 125th anniversary of this bridge. Designed by Alberto Palacio, he was one of Gustave Eiffel's students and disciples. Can you see the similarities to the Eiffel Tower in this design? Men were waiting on the roadway, straddled by two enclosed passenger carriers. Our bus was then driven onto the transporter to proceed us across the Nervion. This video has been speeded up for this crossing. Our group waited for the ferry to return. This brilliant design works very well for transporting across the river without interrupting the water traffic. Now we boarded the transporter for our ride across the Nervion. Upon arrival, we looked up at the superstructure of the giant pylon and the ingenious design of this World Heritage Bridge. There's a chocolateria right at the foot of the bridge. We went in for a rest stop. We then learned that this beautiful Basque mother and daughter owned this successful chocolateria and enjoyed some of their yummy brew. Back outside, we noticed a statue above us. Is that Alberto Palacio, surveying his masterpiece? On down the road, we went past an enormous shipyard. Someone had written a Basque separation sentiment along the pier. Finally, we got a great look at the vast Bay of Biscay that forms the rugged coastline of the Basque country.
Castro Urdiales has an extremely long breakwater to protect its harbor. It's because, besides tourism, the chief industries are fishing and the preservation of fish. This old town is on the Camino de Santiago, the Pilgrim's Way. It's a network of paths leading to the Roman Catholic shrine of the Apostle St. James, further west from here. This medieval church is one of the stops on the Camino. The very old path is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Many follow its medieval roots as a form of spiritual devotion, though it's also popular with hiking and cycling enthusiasts and organized tour groups like ours, just out to enjoy the scenery, inns, and lovely old Gothic churches and their ancient architecture like this one. The scallop shell is the iconic symbol worn by pilgrims. It's also used along the way to guide pilgrims heading to Santiago de Compostela along its ancient route. The lighthouse atop the old castle looms over the waterfront and out to the long breakwater. For hundreds of years, this beautiful Basque port and its countless fisher folk have watched the pilgrims pass through their town from medieval times to today.
Tienes desde aquí, Ignacio. Mira, está la vaca con remo. ¡Rema! ¡Valiente! ¡Rema! ¡Mira!
The coastal road passed several villages next to the water and inland.
Further west, we arrived at another large bay and a marina with a multitude of watercraft. This is the magnificent coastal city that is the headquarters of the wealthy multinational bank. It is the location of the founding of the namesake company, Santander. After a very filling lunch at our new hotel, we walked over to a nearby park that commemorates the fire that burned this city during 2 days in 1941. Most buildings were destroyed, with the medieval area completely lost. An unknown number were killed. These memorials remember the tragedy. Nearby, we were once again overwhelmed by fabulous architecture. This is the Bottin Center, designed by the Italian Renzo Piano. Just a year old, his building, made of pearlescent ceramic disc, somewhat resembled giant limpet shells encrusting a ship. It consists of 2 oval pods shaped like a vessel's hull. They seem to float over the ground, supported by an array of slender columns and partially projecting over the water. This is the main venue of the Bottin Foundation, established by the Bottin family, owner of Banco Santander.
De Estados Unidos.
Like the riverside renovation in Bilbao, this is the old dockland and industrial area of Santander, now revitalized with this building that vaguely resembles a maritime structure. Maybe more of a drilling platform or a ship in dry dock, laid down on the seafront and overlooking the bay and the waterfront. You decide. Back down the building's elevator, we once again looked at this striking structure. Then we walked back toward our hotel and just beyond to a park. We had planned to watch the evening fall over the Bay of Biscay. It was nearly the summer solstice, and we were hoping for a good sunset. We seem to be eating a lot of meals on this trip. Keep the travelers full and thus happy might be the motto of this tour company. Tonight was no exception. We were taken to a great seafood restaurant right around the corner from our hotel. Tapas were on offer, but we were going to have a regular sit-down meal with some great Spanish wine. Deep-fried calamari rings came out as an appetizer. Our main was stuffed salmon topped with avocado, olives, and tomatoes. We had given up eating dessert, so left to climb into our beds, full and happy. Here we are eating again, now in our hotel dining room for breakfast. Plates of wonderful fresh fruit enticed us. Of course, no Spanish breakfast is complete without Iberian ham. There was frittata, as well as made-to-order eggs. And coffee cakes, dessert even for breakfast.
Well rested, yes. Today we are going to visit, two towns.
The first of the two towns is Comillas, again located on the coast. We went through the town, walking on the old cobblestone of the Pilgrim's Path through this city renowned for its modernista architecture. We weren't going to a church, but to a fabulous tile-encrusted house designed by Antoni Gaudi, the legendary Spanish architect. Beyond the pillars, at the entrance, was the ticket office. The house, begun in 1883, was the summer home of a wealthy family. Like Gaudi's most famous creation, Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, this house features a whimsical design. The entrance shows what's meant by Spanish modernista style. The home is called El Capricho, the whim. Inside, we found beautifully designed windows overlooking a terrace. Above us was a solarium hung with cascading plants. Up a tiny stairway we went. There we found a huge gabled room, now almost empty. Some examples of Gaudi-designed graceful furniture were displayed there. This time, we went out onto the terrace and looked up to see the minaret, an obvious Gaudi interpretation of an old Islamic-style tower. Below, in the garden, sat a statue of Gaudi himself, looking up at his creation. Passing close to sunflower and green leaf tiles, we went back inside. Now out in the garden, we found Gaudi and decided we'd give him a chat. Looking up, we got a view of the astounding and colorful house. We took a path up to the top of the garden to get the full Gaudi effect of this architectural wonder. We stop briefly to take some photos of the picturesque countryside of this exquisite Basque coastline, dotted with numerous sandy beaches and small farms. This green-painted walkway was constructed specifically to provide for the many pilgrims on this Camino de Compostela.
This coastline is really blessed with sandy estuaries. We stopped at San Vicente de la Barquera. It was time for lunch. Under the covered arcade we went to find our restaurant. The sign read 22 degrees, about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect for eating outside in the arcade. Al fresco. Thus began what everyone decided was our most astounding meal in the Basque Country. A crusty fresh loaf started us off. Next, a perfect spring salad with white asparagus. Thirsty? Plenty of liquids to drink. What will you have? Let's begin with deep-fried calamari. Then follow that with sautéed green chilies, sprinkled with crunchy sea salt. That's just the beginning. Beef and gravy with fries and pimento came next. Still hungry? Have you ever seen a more beautiful seafood platter filled with fresh catch? Oh, and a deep pan of amazing paella. Here we all are, out for our fabulous al fresco lunch in Spain.
So the cheesecake, lemon mousse, chocolate mousse, rice pudding, and chocolate ice cream. Almond ice cream. How many want ice cream?
Tickets for the new diners hung on the wall as we staggered away from the arcade. Time to walk off that banquet. First, another picture of our group having a great time in this old medieval town. Now we were again climbing to another stop on the pilgrim's path. The battlement of the old castle rose above us as we entered the enclosure of the medieval hilltop. An enormous metal sculpture of a sailing vessel hung on the side of one building. Possibly it was anchored here in the estuary at one time. Close by was a map of the Camino for those wanting to find themselves on this timeless pilgrim path. It was hard to believe how empty the arcade was as we departed San Vicente de la Barquera to return to our hotel in Santander. The next morning we were greeted with more gray skies. We checked out our hotel to board our small bus once again. We were leaving to go farther west. Just outside of town, we passed under another white bridge over the autovia. Not sure who designed this one, but it too was glorious.
Into the mountains we went, toward the medieval kingdom of Asturias. It was there that in 722 a group refused to pay the tax imposed on non-Muslims by Muslim Berbers who had begun to conquer the Iberian Peninsula. Here in this rugged place, Covadonga, these Christian Visigoths had defeated the Muslims. Then they hid out in these rugged mountains. We drove into the hilltop enclave that now memorializes this epic victory over Islamic domination. A grotto sat in the hillside as we passed two large lion statues flanking the road on the approach to the large Roman Catholic Church. The leader of those who defeated the Muslim Berbers here was Paella. His statue greeted us, the founder of the first Christian realm established after the Muslim conquest. It's not surprising then that Spaniards go on pilgrimage to Covadonga, like the way Americans visit Revolutionary War battlegrounds in New England. Paella's grave rests at the entrance to the cave where he and his soldiers camped back in 722. According to legend, the Virgin Mary appeared here during the battle to help the Christian warriors. Today, there's a small cliffside chapel dedicated to this apparition of Mary, the Virgin of Covadonga. It's reached via a long tunnel that's pierced by an impressive opening showing the church beyond. This main chapel holds an ornately decorated statue called La Santina. She draws the faithful from across the country. Below the grotto was a waterfall, flowing to a pool below. We went down to get the view of this beautiful location. On through the mountains we went, now returning to the north, going closer to the coast. We passed some lovely old secluded villages that hugged the roadway.
Our destination was another medieval village, Santillana del Mar, along the Pilgrim's Path. This is a non-resident, pedestrian-only village. It's visited frequently because it's very near the world-renowned Altamira Cave.
Of the traditional bison that they represent in Altamira Cave. So kind of a prehistoric animal that lived around here and that doesn't exist anymore.
Anna had led us to the famous statue of the now extinct bison that is the iconic symbol of Altamira. It sits in front of one of the wonderful buildings in this village containing structures dating from the 12th century. Our wandering brought us to a gift shop with a dazzling selection of items. Inside was a treasure trove of ceramics, mostly reproductions of medieval art. Our group descended on the merchandise with enthusiasm. If you were looking for a souvenir of Spain, this was your place. Linda spied these Altamira bison, exactly the thing to take home. Yeah.
This is very
This is from Capricho. Oh, there's his name. From Ubeda.
He's done this before.
Are you going to, you're going to have to put that in the box too?
No, I don't know. We'll see what he says.
We were thrilled with our purchase. Every time we look at our bison, we will remember this day.
The oldest thing that we have is from the Paleolithic period. So it is 36,000 years ago. So that's the oldest one we have in this cave. A human hand from 22,000 years ago. And this cave was locked by a stone that fell down and blocked the only entrance to the cave. And for that reason, the paintings, they are in a very special state of preservation. It's also the first place where they see paintings from this period in the world. So it made this quite a remarkable finding at the time. And curiously, the first person to see the paintings was a little girl. Because she was smaller, she was the first one to go in with the lamp in her hand, and she looked to the ceiling and she said, "Dad, there are animals in here."
Maria? Maria?
Oxen, Papa, hey, oxen! Look, Papa. Dancing drawings, Papa, dancing drawings.
Let's go back to school here.
No.
Oh?
See, they move.
What is it, my dear? What moves?
The stones.
What is it? Stones? Look like oxen?
No, look.
There are many. It's wet. Wet. What is this?
It's a whole herd, Papa. This one's standing and this one isn't finished yet. Who painted them, Papa? Was it the primitives?
I don't know, Maria.
Our group entered the Altamira Museum. It holds a reproduction of the UNESCO World Heritage Site cave. We were excited as we came into the museum on the 150th anniversary of the first finding of these ancient and incredible cave paintings. No one knows who painted the ceiling. We only know, through scientific study, how they did it. This superb museum, through its displays, shows how the people who inhabited the cave might have appeared, beginning from around 35,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago, or the beginning of modern-day human culture and civilization. The museum exhibits how the extinct animals might have lived. There are some of the actual tools that were used by the cave dwellers, made from both antler and stone. We waited our turn and then entered the cave, an exact reproduction to save the actual cave just next door from the destructive force of our breath. The opening was awesome, showing several levels of excavation of the various periods of habitation. Authentic bowls and a spatula were displayed as found, as if the owners would return momentarily. Then we had the sublime feeling of walking into prehistory.
Andreari beti egunero galdera berdina egiten dutzo Feliza maitxie egia gero zenbak izonek azein dozulo